Hello and welcome. Today we are here to talk about the aspect of how do we try and maximize our marks in the international relations sections in the GS2 paper in UPSC Civil Service Mains examination. So we should keep it very simple, especially our approach should be very simple when we are thinking in terms of the examination. Assuming that we are writing the mains based on our best possible preparation. So that is where the idea is that whatever we write is based on what we know, not any special information which is out there which is going to help us. What we know is going to help us. So when we are writing the exam and when we are very close to it, the approach should always be that we should play to our strengths, meaning we should be confident in the fact that whatever we know is good enough for us to score well. So you should start with this belief, and we will learn then through various experiences as to why is this true. So one, if we see, for example, in this examination, what is necessary, if you could see, follow these points, and these are the points that I'll simply follow, nothing more than this. What is important is that if you understand the requirement, if you understand the requirement well of the exam in general, what kind of skills are generally being tested, and then if you can understand the requirement of the question in particular, this is the starting point of writing an answer which would fetch you good enough marks. Alright, so understand the requirement of the examination. And where does that come from? It comes from a combination of syllabus plus previous year's question. Syllabus plus the previous year's question is where our understanding primarily starts from. So for example, if we combine the syllabus and the understanding of the previous year's question expectation, we understand that syllabus first of all gives us the focus, and we understand, for example, some areas of the world are more important than others. For example, the neighborhood, that is something that we directly know. Then the second aspect that we know is the expectation. So the syllabus uses these words: India's interests, right? and the syllabus uses the words like politics and policies of developed and developing countries. And the syllabus then also uses the word like diaspora, and syllabus also uses the word structure and mandate, right? So basically what we are doing is we are seeing that the focus of our answer is very clear. For example, when we are talking about neighborhood, we are talking about a location, a geography. So for example, we can understand that awareness about location and its implications is important, and that is something that we learn. Second, we understand that we should always be India centered. Always in this section of the paper, we should always be India centered. Our examples where the question has directly involved India, of course, that is the direct expectation. Where the question does not mention India, you answer the question keeping in mind India's worldview, right? So broad guides are always there. And the UPSC then says that some issues are best thought about in terms of how this, meaning whether a country is developed or whether a country is developing, determines the position of that country. So for example, when you are thinking in terms of relations and you are thinking in terms of positions and you have to show differences and similarities, you are able to think through this lens also. You are thinking through this as well. So that is what UPSC is telling you through the syllabus. When you are thinking about a topic like diaspora, all this is combined. One example is aspects like, one, definition of the diaspora, right? Another aspect is the attributes of the diaspora, and you will see, if you see the attributes of the diaspora, factors like location, where are they located, in which country, factors like their economic attributes, meaning, for example, the Indian diaspora in UK contributes around 6% of UK's GDP, right? So economic aspects, and then you can also see that you can include cultural aspects, right? When you are thinking about diaspora, diaspora related questions, attributes of diaspora. And when you are thinking about international organizations, you are thinking in terms of structure and you are thinking in terms of mandate, right? So what is the aim of an organization and what are the different features which help the organization fulfill these aims. So you are thinking in terms of membership, you are thinking in terms of subsidiary bodies, and you are thinking in terms of, let's say, resources or financing of these organizations, right? So when you combine, the first step is when you combine the syllabus and previous year's question, you already get an idea that A, the coverage of IR or international relations is diverse in nature. B, thereby there is scope of using our learning from different subjects applied in the relevant context, IR specific context. And when we think in these terms, what happens is through enough practice, we develop the ability to provide diversity in the answer. So that's one clear requirement, that you don't have a static view. You open up your syllabus and you combine it with the previous year's question and you see clearly that UPSC is guiding you. These are the elements of your answer writing. These are the elements through which you can think. But the second thing is, the difficulty is, how do you apply it? So thereby, when you look at the PYQ, as I said, you will find your guide is there. So you would find, for example, questions asked in terms of implications for India, right? Implications for India. For example, you understand that if the question is in the context of challenges or opportunities, right? If you broadly can read your answer or questions in these ways, you will find that they flow from India's position and they flow from India's interests, right? So with enough practice, you clearly start recognizing that UPSC is asking certain kinds of questions. These kinds of questions are primarily driven by India's worldview, India's role, how India sees the world, and thereby the questions are either direct in nature, implications for India, for example, significance for India, or the questions are, without mentioning it, asking you about India's position. They are asking you to identify very clearly India's interests, and thereby they are asking you about challenges and opportunities in the context of position of India, in the context of India's interest, and opportunities or solutions are also broadly guided by these. For example, solution one part can come from India's position, what India wants. Another part can come from factors like location, factors like economic interests, factors like technology, factors like defense and security, and factors like culture. So when you are reading a question, you have to make a sense of what combination of these factors is going to be the optimal part of your answer. So that's what we mean by reading the syllabus effectively, to understand that while IR is responsible for 4 questions worth 50 marks, and here you will see 2 questions generally appearing at serial number 9 and 10 of 10 marks, and 2 questions generally appearing at serial numbers 19 and 20 of 15 marks, right? So that is basically something that would help you in understanding a few things better, right? And we are coming to those aspects. So the first suggestion is understanding the requirement. This understanding of requirement comes from exam centric focus when you combine your syllabus with PYQ, and that is where you start getting the expectation of the UPSC and the building blocks of your answer in terms of thinking. Now this would require these 3 P's, and what are these 3 P's? Patience, perseverance, and practice. There is no shortcut available here. This is something that you have to do, meaning when you are thinking about a particular subject, you look at the questions and you constantly in your mind, first of all, visualize, think, how would I structure the answer, what elements would I include, right? And remember, this is the order: how would I structure the answer and what elements would I include, meaning what would be my content and how would I organize my content, right? So this is the process which requires patience, perseverance, and practice. It doesn't come automatically to anyone. It definitely requires practice, and it is not something which anybody is exempted from. Everybody would have to do this, right? Sometimes you practice by writing full length tests, but every day you can practice by simply visualizing and then doing 1 page of writing, where your primary focus is, and I'm repeating again, how do I organize my thoughts and what is the content that I'm going to use. So once you have prepared for any subject, you have enough content, then the challenge simply is that you organize them, right? So here, for example, few things that you should keep in mind, that your primary limit is not the content. Your primary limit is not the content. If you have done reasonable amount of preparation, have been diligent, regular with your reading, writing, etc. So it's not the content which is your problem. Your most important structural limits are time limit and word limit, right? So this is an aspect which is ignored often, that it is not the perfect answer that you would be writing which is going to fetch you good marks. Of course, you would always try to do your best, but then you would have also to fulfill the requirement of time limit and word limit. Effectively, you are getting 5 minutes, effectively, right? If you exclude the time for reading the question, then fulfilling the requirements of the examination, filling the details, right? And then the actual time of writing. So you are effectively getting somewhere around 5 minutes to write the answer. And secondly, whatever you know has to be expressed in 150 and 250 words. 150 and 250 words, right? So the challenge is then, how do I be flexible enough that I can write the same issues in 150 words and the same issues in 250 words. So here are two suggestions. One is think in broad terms, meaning think in the most important ways in which you can classify the content. Framework thinking, it helps you in writing briefly by highlighting the most important things. All right. And second, when you have the framework thinking, now think that everything is an example of something, right? When you have a framework thinking, you understand that everything is an example of something. So when the word limit allows you, you write through most important points and you give some examples. And when the word limit doesn't allow you, you reduce the number of examples and you write through the most important points, right? Your focus would be the most important structural points of your answer, right? So developing a framework way of thinking and thinking that everything is an example of something, right? Your framework is basically large categories wherein you can fit various examples, right? So any relationship, for example, would have different aspects like political and diplomatic. So visit happening recently, for example, French president coming to India as the chief guest of the Republic Day parade is the example of political and diplomatic aspects of the relations. So if need be, you can if you're writing an answer on, let's say, India-France relations, you can simply mention that India and France relations are guided by vibrant political and diplomatic engagements, right? So that's your main point. But if word limit allows you, you can also use the example, for example, the recent visit of the French president as the chief guest of the Republic Day parade. So framework thinking, understanding that any relationship has different aspects. For example, political and diplomatic aspects is about dialogues, visits, etc. And then example, visit of the French president as the chief guest of the Republic Day parade is an example of that. So knowing when you can work through broader points and when you can open that broad point by adding example is the trick to managing your difficulty of word and time limit, right? Again, the assumption is that you have been regular, right, with your studies and you have figured out the sources well. Now, once you understand this, that this is a method and this is the method to deal with the most important structural limits, time limit and word limit. Now you are practically thinking about the examination, right? You are not emotional about it. You are not emotionally thinking that it's all about content. You are also thinking that there are other aspects apart from content which may be more important. Now what is your content in this exam or this aspect of exam? It's nothing but information, right? So questions in IR are mostly generalized in nature with use of big words, but it is an information oriented section. So thereby your content is the information that you have learned from different sources, right? For example, your own set of readings, for example, newspapers, or for example, if let's say you have attended a classroom program, so for example Vision IS classroom material, or you go through, for example, for content exam centric documents like mains 365, and maybe you have also been diligent enough to, let's say, look into current affairs, monthly current affairs magazine. So it means that there are enough sources for your information. It means that assumption is that everybody has ready access to information, right? Newspaper reading, or the classroom material, or mains 365 document, or current affairs, monthly current affairs, right? And then it is beneficial, it is added benefit if you have also read some books, right? For example, only as example, when somebody like S. Jaishankar writes a book, Why Bharat Matters, right? Or previously he wrote The India Way, right? Or many others have written the book, for example, Ambassador Shyam Saran's How India Sees the World. अगर आप ये पढ़ रहे हैं, if you are reading them, right, these are all sources of information. What are you gathering from these sources? Primarily information, right? So you have become informed, right? Secondly, what you are picking from these are some tools which would help you in not only adding information but also effectively presenting your information. For example, phrases used in these kinds of books, right? Or citation, in other words, quotes, right? Citation or quotes. Now this is not only information but also tools which would help you in improving your answer writing. You present an information, you write in broader categories, and you give examples. Sometimes when the time allows you, word limit allows you, you also intersperse your answer with some sort of citation according to World Bank, according to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, right? According to External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, if you can do it. So ultimately, these are the kinds of content that you are gathering from your reading, which you would use. Everybody has information. Remember, there is no dearth of information, ready-made information or information coming through your notes. The second concern is then the structure, right? So content is information, including facts, numbers, statements, phrases, quotations, etc., right? The second challenge in answer writing is classification of information, because ultimately whatever you are learning is for this purpose. So that's where you learn the method of introduction, body, conclusion. So by this time you should have enough practice to have templates, right? Develop templates of introduction, meaning again this is coming from your content. What is the element from your content that you have learned is best suited for writing introduction, right? Then what are the elements which are best suited for template in writing the body part? In the body part, you basically are either describing, you are giving a description, or you are explaining, or you are discussing, right? So what is the content which basically fits into the body part. Again, practice, right? So that's why we had said that nothing comes without practice. So that is something that you do, and then you develop a template for conclusion as well, right? So it's something that you do through practice, so that in the examination you don't have to apply your mind, and then you have to worry about time, and then you have to worry about the word limit, right? You are already aware that in the examination your actual structural limits are these. So that's why when you practice, what you are doing is you are not only primarily applying the information that you have learned, but you are actually applying it in a structured manner, right? So structure is simply classification of information in an ordered way. So it in very simple terms is thinking about what general methods are there for writing introduction, what general methods I can adopt to write the body part, what general methods I can adopt to write the conclusion. Meaning you develop a template. Nobody invents in introductions and conclusions in the examination. It would be very difficult, right? If you are lucky, if your brain is working fine, in general you will be able to suddenly find an idea which strikes you. But otherwise, if you have templates, generally you will see you will be able to easily reproduce them, right? And you refine these templates through practice again. So structure part is something that you have to think about, right? And then presentation. Now remember the order of priority. It is only the quality of information that you have which does justice with your talent, your ability, when you present it in a proper structure. And then comes the aspect of presentation, right? So what are the aspects of presentation that you see? For example, you understand the purpose of presentation is highlighting your merit. Ultimately, what you are trying to do is, in a field of competition, you are trying to stand out, right? Stand out for whom? Stand out for the examiner, because they are reading a lot of copies. Then, is there an element which attracts the attention of the examiner, right? You are trying to attract the attention of the examiner primarily, because your answer, let's be very frank, would only be read by you while writing and the examiner. No one else is going to read your answer. So meaning you are not producing original knowledge, you are not writing a book, you are not writing a report, right? So ultimately your answer writing is your introduction to the examiner. Whether you should be rewarded or not is determined by this, and your presentation is only a tool to do that. It is not the primary thing, right? And then presentation tool can also be used to manage time and word limit. Sometimes when you are writing, you may have to think about word limit and time limit, and then you may devise schematics which may help you in managing these aspects. So please understand, presentation means primarily that you are highlighting your merit to the examiner by pointing them what are the special parts of your answer. You are attracting the attention, again the same thing, and then you are strategically using it as tools to manage time and word limit, right? So these are the three elements of answer writing that you will generally think about, right? Content is important, content is the king. You can't think otherwise. But then even a weak content can be made to look meaningful, good enough, if you can order your ideas or content in an effective way. And third is, if you can sufficiently use presentation elements, this would give your answer a sense of completion, right? A sense of completion. Now notice this word. And then what you see is this, that you prepare for the best, you expect the best, but you prepare for the worst also. So you'll realize that in some situations, what cannot be suggested generally can be suggested. So then you have, when you are writing the actual exam, you have to think that there may be a situation where things are not as you expected, meaning your content is weak, let's say, in some questions. Nobody knows perfect answers to all questions. Let's face it, it's a practical reality, right? And sometimes, despite your best efforts, what is happening is time is running out, right? So these are last case scenarios. The questions that you see are not the kind of question that you expected. It may happen. Or you may have some weaknesses in the content that you think that is required to writing a perfect answer, or your time is running out, right? So these are some of the scenarios that you should keep in mind. So here the options of last resort come into play, right? And I'll explain it further by simply going to the next section, right? Which is learning from the toppers, right? So one, generally speaking, develop your own view on which questions you are going to write first, right? Because ultimately you are not going to write perfect answers for all 20 of them, but you have to complete all of them, right? That is the requirement. So completing all 20 questions is important, right? Obviously, don't write anything that you don't know. Don't write anything obviously wrong, but try to write to do justice to the demand of the question as much as possible. Sometimes you may have to write. Generally, these are the practicalities of the examination. But when you stand out with your sincerity and your clarity, right? So first, that is something that you should prepare for. An idea, how are you going to approach the paper? So let's say I'm giving you an example. Some people have this idea that I will first write the 15 markers, right? Because there I have a larger scope of writing. I have a comfort of writing 250 words, right? And then I will write 10 markers. Some people start with this idea. Some people start with the idea that I will first write the first chronologically, first 5-6 questions, right, which are 10 markers. So I will first write 5-6 questions so that my handwriting, my presentation are optimal because I'm fresh. And then I will go and write the 15 markers so that I can utilize the space of word limit, scope of word limit which is there. And then at the end I will write the rest of the 10 markers, right? So these are some templates of strategies that people have. But apart from having these templates, the last is be flexible also, right? Be flexible also. On the exam day, you respond to the situation that you face, right? But have an idea that completing 20 questions is important for you to score enough to get good enough marks to get recommended for the personality test and get selected. 20 questions. How are you going to break down those 20 questions? Right? So first 5 questions chronologically are written by some people because you are fresh. This is best of your ability. Your handwriting is good. Right? When people decide I'll write 15 markers first, they are thinking about the scope, the space of word limit, 250 words. All right? And this is then tailored individually, how you feel, with the expectation that ultimately you have to be flexible also, right? Go by what is happening on that day, right? With the understanding that the primary requirement is the first 20 questions have to be written to the best of your ability, options of last resort. So for example, you will see that your presentation tools can also be helpful as option of last resort. You have written most of the questions beautifully, adequately. Now you don't have the time left, right? So what are you doing? In the rest of the questions, you are using your understanding of presentation to present the most important ideas. You may not have the time, but you are not leaving that question vacant. So that's where you can draw flow charts, etc. as a tool to save time and as an option of last resort. ऐसा आप कर सकते हैं, right? So this is something that we generally can talk about. Now, let's see the learning from toppers, because this is fashionable. But what is fashionable is not necessarily the best way of learning. I'll show you the copies, but let me give you my opinion. When I was, for this session, looking at the answer scripts of toppers of the previous years, I did not find a single answer which I can show you as an ideal answer. Right? This is a very honest fact. So which means what? We know that people generally are scoring well in paper 2, but we don't know specifically how much are they scoring in IR. There is no way of knowing that. So please understand that take the holistic view of the paper, and IR is only a section of that, right? And when I look at the copies of the topper, I find that it's not that they are writing exceptional answers, right? So again, the one thing that you should learn from topper's copy is read them and just realize that they are also human beings. So if they can do it, you can also do it, right? Drawing confidence from the answers of the toppers is the best use of it, rather than becoming disheartened by looking at what they have done the best, right? So what they have done best is the reflection of their ability, their work over the years. You cannot, as it is, copy it. You would have to develop your own method by practice. But there is one utility of looking at the toppers answer script. In many cases, realizing that what they are writing is something that you can also write, right? They are not writing anything exceptional in many cases. And certainly that was the case in most of the answers that I went through from previous year's tests of individuals who later became topper, right? So they have this strategic thinking. They are thinking about the core, and then they have managed many of the rest of the aspects, right? So in general, then, what is the conclusion that I drew from looking at the topper's copy? One is simplicity of approach, right? Because they are thinking strategically, they are thinking about entire 20 questions, they are thinking about the time limitation of 3 hours and the need for writing all the questions. So they have a simple approach, simplicity of approach, right? This translates into simplicity of articulation, meaning articulating not through writing something which they don't know, but writing the thing that they know with clarity, right? Not thinking that you can impress somebody by telling them what you actually don't know, but you have only heard. Rather than that, try to tell somebody what you know with clarity, right? That is something that you can learn from toppers copies, right? Toppers copies. This is something that I could discern as a learning. Articulation, clarity, right? If you can't impress by heavy words, heavy facts, impress by clarity, right? Write with clarity. So for example, writing with clarity may mean also this, that you wrote one word and then you struck it off, and then you started again, and then you thought that I should write something else, then you struck it off. So this crisscrossing of words, overwriting. Now these are some of the ways in which you show lack of clarity, right? So simplicity and thereby clarity, just the way Virender Sehwag used to bat, right? See the ball, hit the ball. That was his simple approach, right? And ultimately a sense of completion, right? A sense of rounding off. If you read their copies, you will see that they have made an attempt to complete their sentences. So they are not simply throwing points. Second thing that you will see, they have made an attempt to have an integrated whole in terms of their answer, where you find that they have made an attempt to round off an answer, all right? They have given it a sense of completion. So particular answers have been written logically well, rounded off. And then if you read their entire answer script at the larger macro level, you will find again they have tried to do justice to the most important things, right? They have not tried to do a lot of things, but they have tried to do justice to most important things. So you get the sense of roundedness by reading their entire paper also. I'll repeat this again. Sense of completion in terms of completing sentences. So that is the smallest block of your answer writing. You write your answers through sentences, complete sentences. 2, complete answers, right? In terms of touching down on, let's say, if the question had 3 sections, 3 demands, they have tried to address each of them. It's not that they have addressed 2 demands fully well and they have exhausted the word limit. So then they are cramping the 3rd demand of the question, for example, suggestion, somehow, right? So this is the sense of completion in a particular answer. And when you see the entire copy, you see they have done it consistently, this same thing, through, if not all, then most of the answers. All right, most of the answers. And of course, they all have completed their paper on time, written 20 answers. So this is something that you generally can learn from the toppers in general. And in this subject, I will say that as far as the copies that I saw, I in right conscience could not find elements which I can say that you should copy. But let's see some of the elements, right, from toppers answers, right? So here are, without naming anyone, some of the people who became toppers in the last year writing the All India Test Series or Abhyaas Test Series last year. Now see, this is a question. In recent years, India's relationship with West Asia has evolved from confines of geopolitics to expanse of geo-economics. So here is the ideal or the expected structure of this answer. That you read this question, right? You understood that this is geography, this is the region that we are talking about, right? So for example, if you think about drawing map as a presentation tool, you should practice it, right? So that you can, let's say, show the location of India and West Asia, generally broadly, right? So West Asia is the focus, and of course India, as I said, India centered. Now it has evolved, relation is evolved, right? From the confines of geopolitics to the confines of geoeconomics, right? How would you show this? Through examples. Through examples, right? This is something that you can show through examples, right? So your main body part would mainly be showing this, examples of how India's approach to West Asia was shaped by geopolitics. For example, it would mean factors like Arab-Israel rivalry, wars, all right? Factors like Arab states and Iran rivalry, factors like Iran and Israel rivalry, right? So these are elements of geopolitics, that this was an unstable region, conflicts, etc. were the major features of this region, and this was the primary determinant of India's approach, or limits to India's approach in this region, right? So thereby traditionally India's approach was seen, for example, in its traditional support to the Palestinian demand for statehood, right, which was a popular issue among the Arab countries. Or it is seen in terms of efforts at balancing relations. This balancing is not anything technical, but this balancing is simply how, when two different sets of countries are not getting along with each other, it creates a difficulty in terms of India adopting a unified approach, right? So that was the traditional hallmark of India's approach, including the determining factors and limitations, right? Geoeconomics. So you will see, for example, now you will see, show the changes. So recent times there have been certain changes in this region. For example, Abraham Accords. Abraham Accords were about the change in relation between Israel and Arab states, right? That is another transition part that you would see, and you will basically, now you are using examples like this. This is your content, that the question does not mention Abraham Accords, but you are mentioning Abraham Accords. You are mentioning it to show there has been a transition geopolitically in West Asia, right? For example, efforts at peace between Israel and Arab states, and then you will also see then these have been accompanied by, एक तो वो region change हुआ है, but these have been accompanied by, for example, India, UAE, CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement of 2022. This is the example of geo-economics, right? Similarly, you can add to it examples like UAE being third largest trading partner, Saudi Arabia being fourth largest trading partner. You can say aspects from relations with UAE, for example, investments, partnership in the area of investments for infrastructure, a commitment by UAE of 75 billion US dollars. These are the factors that you are showing. You try to bring diversity. You then say, for example, initiatives like I2U2 are also an example of how geoeconomics and geopolitics have become linked. Meaning, I2U2 became only possible when there was the Abraham Accord, prospects of peace between Israel and Arab states. So, Israel and UAE as Arab states could come together. It is also a result of how over the years India's relations with US have also evolved, right? So, you show I2U2 also as an example, right? And your conclusion should be balanced, which simply means that in today's world, geoeconomics and geopolitics are linked. Meaning, why are countries deciding to whom they should cooperate with in economic matters is also determined by their geopolitical interest, right? This was the intent to write the answer. So, conclusion is a combination of the two major concerns in this question. So, this is how basically you could have developed your answer. Now, let's see what is it that has been done well in this answer. So, this is the introduction that you could see, right? I'm not going to show you the full answer, but what I'm going to show you is that this is how those who became topper in the last year tried to write the introduction. The recent visit of PM to UAE and the adoption of UPI by the same threw light at evolving economic centricity of India-West Asia relations. So what they have done simply is, one, they have used an immediate example of current affairs. They have used the example of a recognizable country like UAE, which is also a primary example of how we can show geoeconomics, because we can show it from relations with UAE, and they have given very quickly an example of something which is economic in nature, right? UPI, transactions beyond borders, is facilitated by UPI, right? So they have combined these elements and they have mainly written the introduction to contextualize, all right? So here, for example, you could see the simplicity of approach, right? That whatever I knew, I am going to use it to create impression. Now, rest of the answer was about the, let's say this is the heading, earlier confines. So they are talking about the traditional aspects of the relationship, right? So here on, I don't think I need to show you the answer, but you saw in the introduction the simplicity of the approach, the rounded offness as I talked about, right? Now here, the next answer, again I am showing you another answer, right? Recently concluded initiative on critical and emerging technology between United States and India promise a long overdue transformation of their partnership in the field of technology, right? So as I said, framework thinking. What is your framework thinking? Your framework thinking is this, that A, India and United States have comprehensive and global strategic partnership, right? Broadly, you know this. This is how the relationship is referred to. You know that this is based on certain similarities that we see, convergence, as we say, convergence of values and interests, right? Convergence of values and interests are driving India-UAE relations, India-US relations. And we are also seeing that this is a new development, relatively new development. India and US have not been traditional partners. So there has been a transformation in this relationship, especially in the 21st century, right? So these are some of the facts that we know, that the comprehensive and global strategic partnership is one, dependent on convergence of values, democracies, etc. Right? Jargons that we use. World's largest democracy, world's oldest democracy. Right? Their shared interests, we will see, right? But we also know that this is a new development, relatively new development, meaning there has been transformation in India-US relationship, right? Two, we know that this relationship is shaped by political and diplomatic engagements. For example, 2+2 dialogue. There has been 2+2 dialogue, more than 50 dialogue mechanisms between India and US. Then economically, we see, for example, any year, any particular year, for example, last year, India-US trade was 118 billion US dollars, and India had a trade surplus, right? So we know this about the trade. But we know that India and US also have differences on the issues of IPR, intellectual property rights. Then we move forward, then we say defense and security cooperation. So we see, for example, US has designated India as a major defense partner, and thereby, apart from defense trade, we have initiatives in the past which focused on co-design and co-production, right? For example, DTTI, Defense Technology Trade Initiative, right? And then we can go on and we say that the cooperation is also in the area of technology, right? And energy and environment. Meaning, framework means sufficiently being aware of different aspects of the relationship. Now, understanding the requirement, as I said, what is the understanding of requirement? So in this question, understand that the requirement is that you could show these kinds of factors. Transformation, do you see it in your framework? You see, for example, overall, we see that recent period has been about transformation in their relation. Second, we see that this transformation is also supported by what is happening recently, that their relationship are evolving, right? And there is a specific demand in the question which is mentioning ICET, right? ICET has been used as an example of technology cooperation. Recently concluded initiative on critical and emerging technology, ICET, between United States and India promises a long overdue transformation of their partnership in the field of technology. And you have to examine. When you have to examine, what you have to do is you have to break down 1, 2, 3, right? Why, how, right? What next? These kinds of aspects. ऐसा आप कर सकते हैं. Now let's see what are the building blocks that I can use in the answer writing. So one, when I have framework thinking, I can always start by saying that India and US share a comprehensive strategic partnership. ठीक है जी, ये हम कर सकते हैं. तो presentation tool क्या हुआ? When I am writing this, I am highlighting this comprehensive strategic partnership. Why? Because this is for me an important jargon, right? An important phrase that I can write, use in the official documents, right? That's one way of starting. And then I can say that in recent times, technology has emerged as a transformative area. So I'm clearing my intent, right? If I first wrote general and showed a jargon to create impression, and then I immediately transition. Technology has emerged as a key area of transformation. Meaning what I'm doing, I'm very immediately addressing one of the key words in the answer, right? And then I move forward and then I say this can be seen through the example of ICET, which was announced in 2022 and launched in 2023, and it is guided by the dialogue between national security advisors and then presentation tool. So for example, when we see ICET, it aims to promote collaboration through government to government engagements, right? This is a case where I can use my presentation tool. Government to government engagement between industry, engagement between academia, right? That is something that I can use as a presentation tool for simply saying that ICT has various aspects. It aims to promote deeper cooperation in the context of technology by generating engagement at the level of government, at the level of industry, at the level of academia. In fields like advanced telecommunication, अब आप example दे दें, advanced telecommunication, quantum computing, etc. Right? पूरी list आप यहाँ नहीं बता सकते. So then once you have established this, you can move on and next say that it is also seen in how India and US in the area of, let's say, अब यहाँ से हम क्या borrow कर रहे हैं? What can we bring? In the area of defense and security, have a commitment to work on in the area of co-production and co-design, as was seen in, and now I'll use another example, as was seen in the initiative of DTTI, which was launched in 2012. Then I'll move forward that technology transformation between India and US is also part of their climate and clean energy cooperation agenda 2030. As I said here, that framework means that I know that technology, environment, energy are important parts of this relationship, right? Here, and then I can say that it is also relevant in the context of, let's say, space, and I'll give the example of NISAR, right? That how ISRO and NASA have developed this NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar. It was known last year, it was known the year before. So this is a question where there is some scope, because ICT, I can't completely write about ICT. So I would first introduce and then briefly write its intent, and I'll say how it goes with the overall intent in this relation: defense cooperation, climate and clean energy cooperation, space, right? And I'll give examples. And this is how I'll develop the answer, right? And then towards the conclusion, I can also say that the work on jointly developing technology or collaboration in technology, another example that you could have used was Indus X, right? Which is basically a linkage between the startup or innovation ecosystems in India and US. That is what you will do. And then in the conclusion, you will point out something like that their technology cooperation can also benefit from developing a common understanding on issues like IPR, intellectual property rights. I would also try to create space to use words like geostrategic convergence in the Indo-Pacific, and I would also use the example of what is happening under Quad initiative. So this was a question which gives us an opportunity to write in broad points, but include a lot of examples, and also For example, a simple tool can be used. It doesn't have to be an exceptional tool, but a simple tool for saving time and describing, right? And from here, what we can learn, and not from the rest of the question, is the simplicity of the approach of starting. India and USA strengthened their partnership with the recent state visit of PM Modi, first time in a decade. So here I will say that you can do it better, right? Because there is a certain disjointed feeling in the statement, right? You frame the statement better. But maybe the student is writing towards the end, 20th question है, towards the end लिख रहा है, ठीक है? तो ऐसा हम मान सकते हैं. आप जब देख रहे हैं तो आप टॉपर की कॉपी से ये सीख सकते हैं कि हाँ, yes, toppers also do with these kinds of introduction. My intent should be to write a better introduction, as I have tried to show you as well. India and USA strengthen their partnership with recent state visit of PM. अब ये presentation tool है, box में एक word कर दिया, right? So here, rather than writing in words box, you can also, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm not going to comment. Obviously these people have proven their merit by becoming toppers, but I'm saying you can better do it by adopting a simpler approach, like simply underline, all right, recent visit. Why? Because you want to highlight, again, this answer aims to contextualize, introduction wants to contextualize through current affairs, want to showcase the knowledge of current affairs. ये purpose है, right? The introduction that I suggested has the purpose of using something very effective at the beginning and making an immediate transition to the immediate subject matter, and also addressing some of the key words of the question, right? So this is also one way. You can improve it, for example, by writing a sentence which is less disjointed, right? और ये बॉक्स बनाने से ऐसा लग रहा है, आपको ऐसा लग रहा है कि थोड़ा कुछ अलग हो गया, ऐसा लगा कि मान लो कि ये सब हेडिंग हो सकती है, right? So आप इसको बेटर कर सकते हैं. So here the presentation tool can be a simple, humble underline, right? It's not necessary you try anything extraordinary, right? Simplicity के साथ. तो ये एक टॉपर का इंट्रोडक्शन है. अब देखें एक और प्रेजेंटेशन टूल जो मैं दिखा रहा हूँ. Now moving beyond the introductions and all of these people, these answer scripts are available on Vision IAS website also, right? You go and read. So here, India's relations with West Asia marks a shift in India's diplomacy with strengthening ties with, right? Rest follows the example. Can you do it better? Yes, you can do it better, right? But इन्होंने साथ में क्या यूज किया है? एक presentation tool जो की है map, right? So here, don't follow the fashion is my suggestion. Do whatever you do with sincerity. So for example, here they have tried to show the West Asia region, right? So for example, they have drawn a very simple schematic, a figure. Actually, it is only this line. If you see, the figure is only this line, right? And a box. So one you could appreciate, you should appreciate that they have used this as an element to attract attention, to give a sense that they have drawn a map. But you can't appreciate it beyond that, all right? Ki bhai, this map is drawn exceptionally well or clearly, but you certainly admire the effort, the attempt, that they are trying to stand out, they are trying to add something which makes their answer special, right? So I would suggest that you extend your map, right? You make it larger, you clearly point out the Indian Ocean region, right? And in relation to that, Persian Gulf, this is West Asia, right? And you expand the map if you want to do it, and you clearly here also show the Mediterranean, right? And then of course you are showing Lebanon, you are showing Israel, you are clearly showing Red Sea, right? So the only thing that I would suggest is, when you are drawing maps, draw it with clarity, right? When you are drawing map, the intent is good, but remember, it is not compulsory. It is compulsory in the paper of geography when the subject matter demands it. So practice enough and try to show the location relative to India, right? Try to show the relation relative to India. That should be your purpose, right? So let's say this is the Mediterranean coast that you can clearly mark. This is the Red Sea that you can mark. This is the Persian Gulf that you can mark. This is the larger Indian Ocean region that you can mark. And of course, this is India, right? So then label it correctly, West Asia, and say India's extended, something like this, extended neighborhood. All right. So use both the elements, labeling, etc., also effectively. What are you showing? West Asia in relation with India as part of the extended neighborhood. How are India and West Asia linked? So here is Iran. Of course, this is Pakistan, right? Iran and Pakistan share a border. This is Persian Gulf. This is Saudi Arabia. At this coast, you have main country like Israel, and here you have countries like UAE. Show a few countries. Have labeling which is as clear as possible from the broadest category, right? Indian Ocean region, extended neighborhood, to now the most important particular categories, and this is the Mediterranean, right? So you can do it. What topper has done, or the individual who later became topper has done, is also appreciable in terms of effort, in terms of thinking about answer writing. Just do it clearly enough and label it better, right? Here West Asia has been written, but don't only show West Asia. Since West Asia is part of extended neighborhood of India, it is easier to draw a symbolic map. You are not in any case drawing a map to any particular perfection of scale. So in that map also try to show India, Indian Ocean region, and then major features like Persian Gulf, Red Sea, and the Mediterranean. So here you are capturing West Asia properly. Label it broadly like West Asia, India's extended neighborhood, or India's extended neighborhood in West Asia, right? And then have larger features like Indian Ocean, so that when you are making points, you can also point out that India and West Asia are important partners of each other, or West Asian countries are important partners of each other in matters of either maritime security in the Indian Ocean region or matters of a rules-based order in the Indian Ocean region, right? So that is something that you should do. This is another thing that you get from a topper's copy, right? So these are some of the things that you would generally see that a topper does. And as I said, that if you are learning from the topper, then learn both from their intent of what they want to do. B, learn that they are also not perfect. So there is always a scope of you doing better. But learn most importantly what is their strength. All right, what is their strength? So let's look at the last slide that I wanted to show, which is again here. The Indo-US relations have seen remarkable evolution from political and economic collaboration to widening the ambit of partnership in the field of technology. Here what you see, that a lot of elements have been presented, simple underlining has been done, there is space between words, there is space between sentences, all right, and highlighting has been used, underlining has been used sparingly to create effect. Can you do it better? Of course you can do it better. By now including, for example, let's say quotes like Prime Minister Modi in US Congress had said a few years back that India and US overcoming the hesitations of history are developing, right? So this transformative aspect is captured by this kind of quote also, right? Or you can include in your very answer the terms like comprehensive, global, strategic partnership as a term which is used to describe, and then you can both account for transformation and technology as the key focus, right? And of course then you can go and explain the ICET a bit very briefly, and then you can add other areas where technology is significant. So here is what I wanted to say, simplicity, right? If you see this answer, it basically on the first glance shows you a degree of sincerity, right? What do you expect from a good student? That they write clearly. When they have good handwriting, that also creates a positive impression, right? For example, I don't have a good handwriting, so I appreciate that they have a good handwriting, right? They are trying to underline, but underlying sparingly. They could have perhaps used better effective words like global comprehensive strategic partnership and underlined it, right? But the intent is fine, and they have tried to bring in aspects like technology, and they have tried to show something like transformation, evolution. But the only thing is that they have done it in a very long sentence, and they are missing an effective element like an effective brief quote or an effective brief phrase, right? So as I said, that you can learn a lot from toppers, and these were basic elements of the discussion that I used to convey the idea how you may try to score to your maximum potential in the IR section. By showing the toppers copy, I said that you can learn from them both through positive examples, and you can learn from them through intent, what was their intent, and you can learn from them how you can improvise on or improve what they have done, right? So hopefully this was helpful in understanding how to maximize the score, but ultimately the test of the pudding is in its taste, all right? So unless you do it, it would be difficult for you to actually appreciate these points, right? So the last suggestion is, remember this triple P, right? You have various examples of triple P, but here it means patience, perseverance, and practice, right? So that is all. Thank you very much, and all the best wishes.